Hello everyone, this is Simona Rich from Rising Moon Astrology. In this video, I will explain the difference between tropical and sidereal astrology systems. It's very easy to understand Indian astrology, or you can see Vedic or sidereal astrology, because all you need to do to identify the location of planets is look at the night sky, and then you will see, for example, the planet Mars, the red planet, and it will be against the background of, let's say, Taurus constellation, and then that's what you call Mars in Taurus in Vedic astrology. And it looks so obvious. Okay, so you look and you see Mars, and it's against the background of stars of Taurus constellation, and then you see that that's what it is. Mars is in Taurus. But that's the only one way of identifying the location of planets. This is the simple way, and that's why people think that since they clearly see with their own eyes that some planet is in some constellation, they assume that if they look at Western astrological chart and they see another sign, they assume that Western astrology is wrong. But you need to understand that it's measured in a different way. So it's definitely not wrong, it's very correct, but it's measured not against the background of stars, the location of planets. You don't identify where the planet is by looking at the constellations, but you identify where the planet is by looking at the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic. Why Western astrologers do that? It's because it's a very simple and reliable calculation which enables us to determine what will happen in the future very accurately, because the ecliptic never changes, whilst the constellations, they retrograde. Of course, the retrogradation is small, it's only 1 degree in 72 years, but it's still happening. So Vedic astrologers are calculating the location of planets and their effects against this background of stars that slowly moves, it retrogrades, whilst Western astrologers calculate the effects and the location of the planets based on the ecliptic, the path of the sun, which always stays the same. By staying the same, I mean that in spring you will find the sun in the same location as last year, so it will never change. Of course, the sun in spring is in a different location than the sun in the summer, so it's always shifting in that regard. But when it comes to year after year, the same seasons, you will find the same locations of the sun. So this makes the calculation accurate and reliable. So for example, Babylonians before used sidereal astrology. Indeed, it's the oldest astrology there is, but that doesn't mean it's the best. It's the astrology that is simple because you simply look and see where the planets are. That's why in the past, when there were no complicated ways to measure the location of planets, that's what people used, because it was very easy to determine. But then they understood that the background of stars is not always remaining in the same place. The constellations slowly shift. Therefore, Babylonians 700 BC started transitioning from sidereal to tropical. It was then more reliable to calculate. They were able to predict what will happen weather-wise. They also were able to set up calendars that will show the celebration dates, the holy days, but it was not the same when they were measuring the location of planets and their effects against the changing background of stars, although I said it changed very slowly. That's why they moved. It was a simpler system. It was a simpler system because of its regularity, but of course it was more mathematical because the ecliptic of the sun is not as easily measured as it is the background of stars, which you see with your eyes. Vedic astrologers understood how the planets affect people based on where they are in the sky against the background of zodiacal constellations. So they carefully studied what happens when this planet is in this constellation, and they made their judgments in this way. Whilst Babylonians later and the Western astrologers, they calculated the effects and the position of planets based on where they see them on the ecliptic. So they understood that if the sun or some other planet is in one place of the ecliptic, which is called the sign, not the constellation, although the same names apply to both, not always though. Like Capricorn is the sign, Capricornus is the constellation. So when they find on the ecliptic, they projected this zodiacal belt, and they see that one planet is in one 30-degree space, okay? And then they understood what this kind of positioning does in the world. Why is it working like that? Because all the planets send rays to this earth. And I know some astrologers disagree, but please listen to me. It's very obvious, I'm sure nobody will disagree with me, that the sun sends rays to this earth. We see it, sun rays. We see how they hit, at what angles they hit the earth. They also hit us. They penetrate the houses. That's how we get the influence of the sun. When we were born, the sun sign is important. That's where the sun's rays were in particular angle penetrating you. That's the sun sign. It's measured on the ecliptic by Western astrologers. So the sun obviously sends rays, but other planets send rays too. They are invisible, they are weaker. Sun is the strongest one, powering all the other planets, not only the moon, all the other planets. So other planets are weaker, they are powered by the sun, but they have very specific effects, and they also send rays to the earth. Now, every moment, some planets move very slowly, some move faster, and they change their positioning. When their position changes, they hit the earth and us at different angles. Angles are angels, by the way. So when they hit the earth at different angles, they produce different results. So who is right, Western astrologers or tropical astrologers? Both. Western astrologers will measure what effect those angles have based on where they are in the sky, measured by the zodiacal belt projected onto the ecliptic. Indian astrologers will measure that effect based on where they are in the sky against the background of zodiacal constellations. Another very important thing to understand is that not even sidereal astrologers base their planet locations on actual constellations, but on spaces designated for particular constellations. Actual constellations can be much bigger, sometimes twice the size of the allocated 30-degree space, and some constellations are smaller than that. Both will be right. This is so amazing. Both of these systems work, and it's ignorant for some astrologers who don't understand tropical astrology to see that it doesn't work. If it wouldn't work, there would be no correct tropical astrology predictions. Of course, now in the West, predictive astrology is not popular at all. It used to be in Middle Ages and little bit later, but now it's not popular. So obviously astrologers had to adjust and make astrology more psychological to adapt to the changing needs of the Western society. But in the past, we had excellent astrologers who were geniuses, mathematicians and astronomers, and all of them, they had the good background in mathematics, astronomy. Otherwise they wouldn't be able to do astrology because there were no software to raise charts. Now we can do it without these sciences, but they couldn't. So they were excellent, they were geniuses, and they predicted many things in people's lives, as well as what will happen to the world at large or to their particular country. For example, William Lilly predicted the Great Fire of London, which happened 10 or 15 years after his prediction, and he predicted the year of that happening. How is that possible if tropical astrology is wrong? Both systems are right. He also predicted the Great Plague. How would that be possible with tropical astrology being wrong? So please understand, both astrological systems are right, and when some astrologers claim that tropical astrology is false, either they don't understand astrology or they didn't study, and then they are just fast to say something they don't know, which is sad if they do that. Both systems work. Western astrologers do use fixed stars, but they use only the most impactful stars, because based on the geocentric model, and that's the only way astrology works, if we use the geocentric model, the sphere of the stars is the furthest sphere. There are 7 spheres of planets, and then there is the last sphere of the stars, and then there is the sphere of God. So being the furthest, the influence is the smallest. That's why we don't pay much attention to the constellations, except for strong stars within those constellations. So when those strong stars sending stronger rays to the world conjunct the main angles or conjunct the personal planets, we will pay attention to that for sure. But that's pretty much it, because the way that we see the sphere of fixed stars is that this is the calculation of epochs, and I will explain why this is thought to be so. And I'm not speaking about all the Western astrologers, but there are many who understand it this way, but I'm mainly speaking the way that I understand it through study of astrology. Because the spheres of the fastest planets are closest to the Earth, so Moon is the first planet closest to the Earth, then is Mercury, Venus, the Sun is in the middle, the ruler of all the planets, that's why in the middle, and then there are the greater planets, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, Saturn being the furthest of all the planets, the furthest sphere. And all of them, you see, move slower and slower the further they are, and Saturn moves the slowest, and beyond it, and I'm talking about classical astrology. So beyond Saturn is the sphere of stars, fixed stars. And they are the furthest. That's why they influence us the least, but the influence is there always, but very subtle. And the way that they influence us, except for the big stars that I mentioned that will influence our lives directly, they influence the epochs because of the precession of the equinoxes. When Aries was rising on the eastern horizon in the springtime, the time was very different. It was the time of Jesus. Jesus lived at the end of the Aries age. That's why he said, I am the first. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and the last, because Pisces was the next zodiac to rise on the eastern horizon in spring. People were more fighty. There were many battles. There were human and animal fire sacrifices. This is all ruled by Mars. Then Pisces was rising in the eastern horizon in the springtime. What happened then? People were very religious. It was all about churches, and I'm sure in India it was about going to temples and worshipping, and even church leaders, they were also political leaders. It was like all ruled by the church. Piscean age. Now we're moving to the Aquarian age. It's totally different now. It's all about technology. People are future-oriented, progress-oriented. Stars have big influence, but the influence is subtle on a daily basis because they are to do with the changing times, with the epochs. That's why we pay attention, Western astrologers pay attention to the ecliptic, the path of the sun, and they project their zodiac on it, on the ecliptic, because the sun has the biggest influence on the earth. And we can see it by its rays. It's sending even tangible rays to us. That's why we measure the location and effects of planets based on where they are on the ecliptic. Planets are on the ecliptic, near ecliptic, below, above the ecliptic, but this is the belt that we are measuring where the planets are. So I really hope I'm making sense. I think I explained it in a very simple way. If there's something not clear in the way that I explained it, please let me know. I will try to explain it more, maybe in another video. Let me know if you want to hear more, but this is pretty much it. So thank you for watching this video, and check the link here. I will place another video about this subject once I make it, if I make it. And if it's not there, I will link the playlist of 12 zodiacal signs. So thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day. See you in the next video.